Welcome everybody, and let me kick off this session. We are going to talk about 7 deadly sins of recruiting, and our guest today is Vineet Gambhir. Let me introduce Vineet. Keith, can you take to the next slide? So Vineet is a results-driven executive with experience in strategic human resource, information systems, digital transformation, and scalable operations. Vineet has held several senior leadership roles at innovative technology companies with a global presence in US, China, India, and Singapore. He joined Data Link Software last year as CHRO and has already made his mark, helping lead Data Link to most loved company status. He earned his MBA in human resource at the University of Maryland. Vineet was also recently recognized as the top HR influencer by Engagely, and he is also part of the Forbes Human Resource Council. Welcome, Vineet, and we are super excited to talk about the 7 deadly sins of recruiting. And as we all know, recruiting has been like in the news for good reasons and bad reasons, and more so lately. So why don't you kind of set the stage and tell us about these 7 deadly sins at a high level first?
All right. Well, first of all, hi, Needu. Hi, Team Pointers, and a warm welcome to everyone who has dialed in. I wanted to kind of set the context for what prompted me to write about the 7 sins and what they are. And so about, when I started my career, I was amused by the fact that we were spending millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars in a 60,000 people organization, a tremendous brand in the market. And we would spend a lot of money in the parties, in the recognition programs, and, you name it. Our goal was to make the employees happy. And yet, when we asked the people who would join us or about to join us or looking at us, they would give us a terrible rating at their experience. And so it was counterintuitive for me that on one hand, we are spending so much money to make people happy, but in that process, we are missing the very pulse of what makes people happy. And that got me then to investigate a bit and realize that it's really our processes and the experiences we create, ironically, not with those who are already part of your journey, but those who are looking at your journey. So a candidate who has a really bad experience in interviewing with you doesn't get selected. You kind of move on as an HR professional because you got the person you hired. That one person goes to 50 other people and says, oh, I had a terrible experience with this company. I think you should avoid it. Now those 50 resumes don't come to us because that experience was, and it becomes then a cascading effect. And so what I then realized is that it's really the way you treat people, it's the mistakes you make. And the mistakes were so simple that prompted me to write down the 7 deadly sins of recruiting. And in short, I like to go over maybe some of those, and then maybe sometime towards the end of this call, I like to share about what we do differently in the company I'm at and how I've tried to address those sins. We do sin at times like anyone else, but we minimize those experiences. So the first one really is when you don't respond to a candidate who submits the resume.
So Vineet, let's kick it off with a poll, because I have a poll. I just want to say, make it more exciting. Let's see who has sinned, right?
Excellent. Let's do that. Confession time.
I'm launching a poll, and it's about, what % of job seekers don't hear back from employers. So why don't we move on? I'll do it.
Yeah. Why don't we sure. Discuss, and then perhaps in the background you could send this in. So, and I was going to ask that, like, how many times as a job applicant you've applied for a job and never really heard from anyone, right? And how many times you even progressed to an interview stage and yet you then never heard anything after that interview. So the first sin which we can commit, and we commit often, is the fact that we don't respond to a candidate who submits the resume. And so I asked the recruiters, I managed in another company, why don't you do that? There are many excuses which come up, right? Which is, oh, too many resumes. we're too busy, we have too many positions to fill, not enough time. Or someone even became creative and said it could be a legal liability if we responded. And I was wondering, what legal liability would you create if you just said, thank you for applying and we'll be in touch with you, right? And in fact, I then kind of reflected on the number of seconds it takes for us to process this thought that we shouldn't be responding to this email. It was about 8 seconds worth of thought, which said, I'm not going to respond to this person because I'm too busy. It took half that time to actually respond to that applicant, even with a canned response. So the first sin we need to avoid is really acknowledge and respect the applicant as a potential customer of the company and say, I must respond to everyone who applies with an aspiration to join the team, because that could be that next superstar. That could even be the next CEO you're going to hire or the next C-suite member you're hiring. So that is the first step. And that will be a good segue into your poll on, in fact, reflecting on your own experiences. Have you had a time when you didn't hear back from employers? And so let's perhaps, I know I'm going to participate in this poll as well, Needu. So.
Oh, I actually.
That's fine. You can
The
count
results.
mine.
That's okay. I think
Count mine.
yes, we know you. So 75% is what kind of won, and that is actually the right number. So 75% of job seekers don't hear back from employers. And I can see how, I see both sides. Me as someone who is trying to seek a job, there have been so many times I never heard, or you submit the application and then there is, absolute silence. No one kind of reaches back. Or it's even after the interviews or even going through the final rounds that people don't care to reply back. So whoever has, clicked on 75%, that is the right percent of, job seekers that do not hear back from the employers. Interesting is it's such a high number, right? It's such a high number that it's amazing when we see that number. Oh my God, we are sinning really bad, but I can see both sides. So what do you think, Vineet, why does this happen? Is it like too many candidates that recruiters have to sift through, or what is it?
So, and I'll address this down in some of the other sins as well, but some of it is attitude. What I found is that you kind of look for only what you're looking for and you ignore everyone else. And we'll talk about that in detail as we go along as well. So some of it is more like, I only need one, so I don't need to worry about the other 20, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is an attitude, and this is going to be a very direct conversation, unfiltered. So I would say the second one is an attitude which says, I'm the job giver, you are the job seeker, I'm doing you a favor, or I'm in a position of power by giving you a job. And I think when you have that attitude, you kind of feel entitled to say, the translation of that sin or thought is, I can treat you the way I can because after all, I'm the one who's giving you the job. If you invert it and you talk about you're acquiring talent, which is going to enable your company's success, the candidate is doing you a favor, or the candidate is going to add value to you by joining you, or you are fortunate that someone has chosen you as an employer. When you have that humility in the process, you will respond. So some of it is just the perception of dynamic, and it's not just recruiting. I see that attitude over the years, which I've tried to consciously address in my team, for example, is the attitude of human resources. It's in itself, right? Are you there to serve the employees, or are you there because you are enforcing rules for everyone and everyone should be fearful of you because you have the ability to hire or fire people? So again, attitude plays a big role. Volume also plays a big role, that you are overwhelmed, you have too many applicants, and you kind of want to get to it faster. But as I mentioned, the time is not an excuse we use in my team, because the time it takes for you to say, I'm not going to respond to this person, is at least equal, if not more, than the time it takes for you to simply say, thank you, we'll be in touch, or thank you for considering us. So not responding is just one of those organizational skills. When you do that, we have found, like I'll give you a specific instance. We had a case where we had an exceptionally strong slate of candidates in a particular role we were looking for, and we were in touch with all of them. Now, it so happened that then in a month later, we needed to have a massive ramp in another organization. So we had, this is a different company. We had a campaign which said we need to hire 90 salespeople in 90 days. So we needed 90 people all of a sudden to support an unexpected growth ramp of our company. We were able to go back to those 8 people who interviewed for that position and say, hey guys, you kind of know us. Can you help us out with your network? Well, 4 didn't reply, 3 replied, 1 of course was selected, so that person became a brand ambassador. But 3 people replied and said, hey, I know, by the way, these great people, and this is an idea for you. And we were able to get about 38% of that number through a combination of referrals, not just from those people, but people in the network. And so there is a philosophy, or there's a program which I have put in place in some of the companies I have worked for, and that's called like you're like a member of the company for life, which means that just because you've interacted with us, you now become a member of our community, which means we'll keep you updated on what we are doing, and you keep us updated on any referrals or talent which you have. And I think that's been an incredible program for us, where it helps us establish that background. So again, it's a function of time. It's a function of attitude. The value is you create a brand. When you are a responsive employer, people say, you know what, I didn't get it this time. Let me try again next time. Oftentimes, I always find that if you don't get a response back from an employer, you hesitate to apply again. Whereas the problem is, you could have 5,000 positions. You were not a fit for a particular role, but another role could appear in the future. And now you are turned off, that you don't want to ever apply to the company or encourage the people to apply for the company. And so that talent pool you're considering big shrinks, especially in a competitive market. All right. So if we can move on then to the second sin. So then, I mean, again, maybe, I don't know if there's an opportunity for a poll, but I'd like to, maybe you can, if there's an, Neetu, would the folks have a chance to even use the chat board? Do you think they'll have the ability to type in, or no?
I actually launched the poll. You should see to Vineet.
Okay, outstanding. So, it sounds fancy, right? Biases sound fancy. It's that textbook concept, doesn't happen in real life. Didn't happen to me because I applied for a job. I got the job offer. What bias, right? Now, someone has an accent. Someone's name sounds kind of too foreign to you. Someone is, so let me replay. I actually came across a recruiter who looked at the name on a resume and said, that name sounds like this person wouldn't be good in English. This job requires good communication. I don't think we should talk to this person. And the recruiter actually put the person in the rejected lot, till, of course, I fortunately got to know about it, and we put that person back, and the person got hired and was a fantastic hire. But that's just one story. Imagine how many of those biases happen in the background. That's one instance you will hear. Other is, suppose you've got a relatively elderly candidate in front of you, and you got this very young person sitting in front of you. What thoughts come to your mind? Would the thought in the recruiter be to differentiate between the older worker and the younger worker? The answer should be no, absolutely not. Do those thoughts come in the minds of recruiters? Probably, right? Or maybe. The third case could be, someone walks in with a crumpled shirt, or someone's dress is not as pressed as it should be. Something is wrong with the appearance, maybe the hairstyle, maybe the dress style. Would you be open and say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the candidate's potential and not worry about the aspects which are it? But more times than not, people take notes and say, no, I feel this person made a spelling mistake. I came across again another case which we overturned, where the candidate had a perfect resume, perfect background, unfortunately made a spelling mistake. And it wasn't necessarily a misspelling of words, but it's just that autocorrect, we all love. I mean, if I did a poll on how many people hate autocorrect, I'm sure that'll be 100%. But, that was a simple correction with another valid word. And the recruiter caught that and said, I'm not going to hire because that means this person is disorganized, right? So when we come to those dangerous conclusions, because we have these ingrained methodologies on what perfection should look like, that prompts us to make decisions in error. Now, that doesn't mean these things aren't important, but you can validate those through other examples, which we'll talk about, to make sure, like in math class, my math teacher once told me, you can never draw a line with one point. When you draw a line through one point, it's called a tangent. If you need a line, you at least need 2 points. Similarly, in human behavior and recruiting, you at least need 2 points to validate your observation. So the reason biases happen is, one, we are ingrained with our historical thoughts of what good should look like and what bad should look like, and that leads to your perception errors. Second, we don't give people chances. We are so unforgiving. You make one mistake and you're gone, and you need to make 5 successes in a row. You need to be near perfect in an interview to get the job, yet you're not allowed even one mistake. And yet when you join the company, you will make mistakes. So, so perceptions happen because of those reasons. And the list goes on. The list goes on and on the biases. I've also had one interviewer who had an unconscious bias. This bias is called similar to me error. Similar to me error is more around when you look for people who are like you. Like, now I'm very clear, by the way, I don't think this world can handle another person like me. So I'm very clear. I don't look for people who are like me. But there are managers who look for, like, oh, this person showed up on time just like me. Or this person dresses up just like me. This person used the same vocabulary like me. But you're not looking like you. You're not looking for yourself. You're looking for the diversity of thought and someone who can challenge your blind spots versus people who will imitate you. So that is your second bias. And look at that poll, 93%. And so, yeah, let's read the poll, 55 and 45. So we got, can I read, Neetu, can you translate this poll
Yeah,
for us?
so the question is, what % of job seekers think hiring and selection can be impacted by unconscious bias? And the right answer is 93%. So we all know and we all feel that there is some kind of unconscious bias in the process, because we ourselves do that. You were talking about these really, they sound really simple and they sound, it doesn't impact, but these things do impact. Like looking for someone who has the same thought process or mindset as me, or looking for someone who looks like me, or looking for someone who comes from the same background as me. I mean, these are things that we don't even think about because these are embedded in us as humans. And I've had so much unconscious bias training throughout my career. And there are these amazing books. And one of the books that I love is by Professor Mahzareen Banerjee. She wrote this book. It's called Blind Spot. And it's amazing. It just teaches you how, it's pretty much in your DNA. Unconscious bias is in your DNA. That's why, you know that fire is hot and you shouldn't touch it. It was more from a survival standpoint, but we have taken it to a whole different level where we are creating this fragmentation in the society or at workplace. But great points, Vineet. I'm actually kind of rethinking what's happening, but 93% of the people actually think that there is bias. So pretty crazy.
Amazing. Yes. So let's now talk about, good segue into the third one. Now, this is something which I alluded to when I was discussing the first point. And this is kind of a variant, right? It's a tricky one because you're kind of being responsive, but then you're not being responsive, right? So this isn't about a tactical exercise where you need to check a box, vacancy closed, job done, you move on with life, right? This is about a relationship you're building. Like in any relationship in life, it cannot be limited to a transaction. So oftentimes what you find, and I'll give you a live example, a few years back, there was this recruiter who approached a candidate, my friend, and said, you will be perfect for this job. He said kind of, thank you, but not interested. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, the recruiter approached again. And from that point, 3 emails, 2 phone calls, and one, almost, in person, like a semi in person, like basically a coffee. Yes, it was a coffee meeting in person in the neighborhood Starbucks. It doesn't hurt for us to just catch up. You're just perfect. This is the dream job for you. Now the candidate started feeling special. Said, well, it doesn't hurt for you to just interview. There's no pressure on you. Why don't you come and talk to us? So then they fly the candidate. They, they give them the red carpet. Now the candidate starts imagining themselves in the office. They can even visualize their office. Now you fall in love with the company and you've spent almost 8 weeks of your time with the company. Well, meanwhile, the CFO of the company says that, oops, we missed our earnings estimate. We're not going to hire anymore. Let's just fill this position, internally. We are no longer going to have the budget to fill this position externally. Well, what happens then is, candidate follows up. Candidate was told they're going to get an offer in one week. They're supposed to relocate and sell their home income. And now there is radio silence. There is no update. Because now no longer that vacancy is open. Therefore, there is no relevance for the recruiter. In the minds of the recruiter, you're not important for me anymore. So from an I love you note to like, I don't know you, that transition was extremely hard for the applicant. And the applicant kept following up, like, what's the status and so on. Or sometimes it also happened in one case where you were interviewing, you thought someone was good. There's nothing wrong with the candidate, but now over the course of the time, someone internal, maybe the C-suite recommended another candidate from their network, or another strong candidate emerged in the process. And now you realize that the person you thought you were going to hire is no longer your front runner. Therefore, it's not important to keep them warm. It's not important to communicate with them. So that happens when you are taking a tactical approach to a immediate need and saying, oh, I need to close this position. I'm focused on closing the vacancy. If you're focused on the vacancy, you will behave like a machine. If you're focused on the human being, you'll behave like a human being, right? So the important thing is that once again, the metric is not so much as how fast you hire a position and whether you hired a position. When we do recruiting in our company, for instance, one of my metrics I use always would be, what experiences are we creating? Like my team actually does a pulse of every single new hire we make, 30 days, 90 days, a year. We do these check-ins and we find out, did you get the attention you deserved? Was it really, the right behavior for you? Was it the right experience for you? So having that follow-up, having that urge, and then you have to keep, as I explained in point number 1, you just never know when you may need your first runner-up. You may need someone for a referral. You may have a different need down the road. If nothing else, if you treat people well, they're going to go and talk nice things about you. If you treat people badly, they're going to go and damage your brand, and then you're going to find it harder to attract talent. Right now, we're in a bit of a market, which is, I would say, an employer's market. Like there are fewer positions and more candidates, slightly getting there with at least in the US. But I will tell you, about 18 months back, it was crazy. You had so many positions and you had so few candidates, right? Those are the times when companies who have a brand are able to attract candidates better than companies which kind of messed up the recruiting process. So I wanted to mention this interesting variant that, yeah, you could argue, like I've had recruiters argue with me, but Vineet, we replied back to that candidate. Yeah, you did, but then did you really continue that journey? Or did you kind of forget about them? Did you only engage them till the point the position was closed? And that's where a differentiation occurs in your brand, is when you treat it like a relationship longer term and not just a transactional relationship limited to just filling up that position. All right. So let's kind of go on. Okay. Now the fourth one is being too narrow-minded about your requirements. So I had someone, a friend again, interview, and they were interviewing for a marketing position. And they were interviewing for a high-tech firm. So very good background, a great technical background, worked for some of the world's most admired companies. The recruiter said, but I know you have tech experience for like 18 years, but by the way, you don't have semiconductor experience. And he was thinking, like, what relevance does the semiconductor industry experience have? Okay, but then my friend was persistent, said, yeah, but no, realize I worked for, Micron technology at some point of my career. So look, I check your box. No, but I also wanted you to have a bit of a SaaS experience. And so he's sitting there and saying, my job is to create a marketing plan. I have tremendous experience creating marketing and communication plans. I've led investor relationships for some of the leading public traded companies, and you are obsessed about my semiconductor experience. So when you make your requirements so narrow, you're kind of going to filter out the applicants. So you may have a not so perfect candidate with the most perfect industry experience, or you could choose to have the most perfect candidate with not so perfect industries. And so that would be a segue for me to ask, what would you choose? Would you rather have the right profile of a right industry, or would you rather have the right human being who you want to hire, right? And that's the biggest test of a good recruiter, is the ability to sniff out that perfect human being who can adapt to, like, if you just take my journey, I was an engineer. No one technically should have hired me into HR theoretically, because I've never done HR in my life before. So as an electrical engineer moving into this, I would say I have worked across the hardware space, the software space. I worked in retail tech. I worked in ed tech, and I worked in the education industry. I worked in the healthcare industry now, and I have worked in the retail industry. And then I have worked for the hardcore technology companies. Every single day, my job includes creating great winning experiences for our employees. They have nothing to do with whether we sell, hardware equipment, to whether we sell education, to whether we sell something in the retail space. It's all about the job you do and the impact you make. And it's not that particular. The needs are the same. The needs of people are the same. So you have to understand the ability of a person and not necessarily look for the exact fit, because you're going to narrow down your candidate pool to such an extent that you will filter out the stars. And I would hire a star any day, even if they don't come from my industry, because I know they will have the recipe to win and make us win. So that is the fourth sin, which I will like to share with you. All right. Another thing I will mention to you recently, in fact, we were having an internship program. We are very fortunate to have attracted a large number of summer interns who are joining us as we speak. And one of the most conscious things we did here was, we didn't say we want only these schools, we want only these GPAs, we want only this. We wanted the human being. We wanted 17 great minds who are going to join us as interns. We don't want GPAs, we don't want schools, we don't want brands. So we don't want to be narrow-minded about what we require of people, but we want their potential, and we need their capability to think beyond what we are already thinking. So that is the fourth part, which is there. Neetu, are we good to move on to the next one?
Yes, great points.
Right.
We can
Great.
go on number 5.
Okay, so on the 5th one is, well, I'm going to look for today's need. So imagine when the internet didn't exist, or imagine when the mobile phones didn't exist, the kind of profiles we were hiring. Now we are talking about AI, we're talking about artificial intelligence. I know that's a space, Neetu, which is dear to you personally as the founder and CEO of an AI-based firm. Now the kind of profiles we look for, I will be honest with you, without AI skills, everybody I looked at the last 18 months, I would say 70% of those profiles are no longer relevant for us, because the kind of technological needs and asks which we have are changing, and they will change again in 2 years. So the question now is, do we look for people who are just able to deliver for you today? Or are you going to think beyond and say, what would those trends look like? For example, we know that the workforce of today is hybrid in nature, or a lot of it is remote in nature. So the question would be, what nuances do I need to keep in mind? Not just worrying about whether COVID will last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Now we have to look beyond and say, maybe 10 years from now, what would the workforce look like? Should I hire talent based on those needs? So part of the job of my team and I is to really anticipate that future. We were actually thinking about AI, automation, thinking about bots about 3 years back, 4 years back. And at that point, the trend wasn't even there. But we always were thinking, can we have more agile technical talent who can help us innovate? And so hiring for the future is important. Um, and the biggest advice I can give to everyone here is, don't look at the resume, because the resume is just like a footprint. It's like a forensic evidence of your past. What you're looking for really is a gateway into the future. So take your crystal ball, think about what the workforce will look like in the future, and don't worry about the resume. If a candidate who can demonstrate that adaptability to the future is frankly going to be a far stronger candidate than a candidate who historically has been good, but has very limited agility to adapt to newer trends. In fact, when we are doing career planning, even when we do performance evaluation in our company, we use that 9-block assessment, which many of you may be familiar with, and we really hone down on potential. Like, can you carry us into the future? Are you just getting the job for today? So having that forward-looking mentality in the recruiting as well is important to have. Otherwise, you will end up hiring the good for today candidates, no doubt good, but you will miss out on the high potential. So that is the 5th part. Okay, let's move on to then the next. This one is dear to me, and I feel that you are a brand ambassador. You are representing, the brand is not the logo, not the slogan, not the fancy values. Brand is all about how you treat people, right? When people talk to you and they say, wow, I really think this was cool. Even if I didn't get the job, oh, I wish someday I can get this job. That's the brand excitement you want. When you're hired, the brand you want to create is that when you wake up on Monday morning, you want to show up to work. When you finished your vacation and you have to join back the office, you kind of like, I had my vacation, I'm rested, I now want to start back my job. That's the brand you want to create. And so very simple things I'll share with you. And this has all happened to me. So I will share with you the brand violations. I've had people yawning at me when I was talking to them. I've had people looking at the watch. I've had people showing up late, very late for a meeting. I've had people who kind of keep interrupting you because they asked you a question, but then they're impatient to hear your answer. I've had people who have attacked you in a meeting. I've had people who have just not been clear about what they want. And yet, they just want to know everything about you, but then you don't even have a chance to ask a single question at the end. Subtle things. And I promise you, each of those jobs I did not decide to join because my fear was, is that the culture I want to be part of? So, and this is just me, I put myself out there as an example, but this is time in and time out. We keep repeating these mistakes. I will be honest with you, there are times, not a whole lot, fortunately, but there have been at least a handful of times where I was late for an interview. But then I have made sure that I apologize for the candidate and I make sure that I own up my mistake because there is no excuse for being late for an interview. Conversely, going to my previous point of a bias, I would love to know if a candidate showed up 15 minutes late for your interview, would you be very inclined to reject them? And the answer likely would be yes. You may forgive them occasionally for an exceptional candidate, but generally speaking, if someone came to you and said, my car broke down or I had an accident on the highway and I just didn't show up on time, would you forgive them? I doubt you or as a recruiter would forgive them because now this candidate just didn't show up on time. It's a hard thing to overcome. But you can show up late, right? Because you are the job giver. So that's the point, that brand gets affected. And this brand is a very important part of what the experiences we create for our potential hires. And again, remember, your hires are actually your customers as well. All
That's a
right.
great point, Vineet, that you brought up. That, hey, if you had someone show up late for an interview, so it's like you are in a position of power when you are taking an interview and you're not representing the brand perfectly, the brand of your company perfectly. That's one. And the other one that you touched on is that if a candidate shows up late, say 15 minutes, would you hire the person? I think, these are two sides of the same coin. And we have definitely had, these instances, we as candidates in the past. And now when we are hiring, we have had people who actually did not show up for interviews, but they came back and they actually had a reason and they wanted to reschedule and get back, on the interview. And as far as I remember, we give them a second chance because you don't know what the situation was. You don't know what they were going through, kind of being a little bit empathetic really, really helps. But it's such a great point. I mean, all of these sins or all these points that you made, one, I feel like they're super practical. And these are things that happen no matter how much you try to avoid them. So I think the whole idea and the point of shining the light on it today is to be conscious about it, to understand that these are things that just happen generally as life goes by, but we have to be conscious and we have to be kind of aware that these are the things that we got to avoid when we are going through this process of hiring people, or even as we are interviewing for a job. This is what we need to be aware of. Awesome, this is amazing. Let's move on to the point number 7, and then I have a poll that we will do.
Excellent. And then I just want to share also what we do differently in our company.
Absolutely. Yes,
and
we
leave
would
some
love to hear
time
that.
for any questions as well.
Yes.
So the 7th one is really when you get in the sales mode, right? Ever had the experience of buying a car? By the way, that's something on my list right now. And I can tell you it's a terrible market to buy a new car right now. And I get this sales pitch, right? And it's like you're selling the world, how perfect that particular thing is for you. And so you go in and you sell to the candidate how wonderful the company is. And you are selling the hiring manager, who could, by the way, change, 3 out of 7 last moves. My manager actually changed after they hired me. So hiring manager, selling somebody on the hiring manager is a very dangerous proposition. You don't do that. But the question is, do you want to really sell the good, right? So, and I will confess, I made that mistake once in my career. I never made it again. And I didn't oversell, but all it did was we kind of were attracting a very high profile candidate many years back. And we kind of told him how wonderful the company was, but we didn't tell him and we told him our office is very nice, it's very comfortable. And he had a little bit of an ego, right? Let's just put it that way. The candidate wanted a certain number of facilities and he was very fussy about it. Well, we also, in our bid to attract the candidate, kind of told him how wonderful an employer we are. Well, intrinsically, we had made the decision that as we were talking to the candidate, we had decided to get rid of closed offices. So we decided that everyone from the CEO to the lowest level employee, in the spirit of building an open culture, will no longer have an office. Okay, that's a fair concept. But we failed to tell the candidate what the workplace would look like. Now, it may seem simple, but in this particular candidate's case, this was a big deal. He was very clear about all the perks and benefits he would like. And we didn't tell him that. And I'll be honest with you, the thought of mentioning this to him had come at that point to my mind. But I said, no, maybe it's irrelevant. How does it matter? Why should he join us just for the sake of how big his office is? So, okay, I erred on the side of, okay, he can adjust when he comes. And that was a mistake. He joined, and the escalation all the way to the CEO happened. The person threw a tantrum. The person was upset. He felt like blind. This may seem like a relatively silly example because you would say like, what a jerk that candidate was. I get it. But the point wasn't so much whether the issue was small or big. The point was, did we portray the honest appraisal of what the workforce would look like? And the answer was we could have done better, right? And so as a rule, when I interview people, I tell them there is at least 20 minutes of my conversation with people, which is dedicated to what's bad about our company. And I actually do that. Every conversation, I'll go over the negatives of our culture. Like I'll tell them, we're a wonderful company. We'll give you a lot of room to innovate. You'll get to create your own space. But by the way, we are chaotic. We are disorganized. We don't have a rule book. We are a startup. If you're someone who needs a lot of handholding, this is the wrong company for you. If you love innovating, but you don't mind the chaos which comes with it, then this is the place for you. Here's where we go wrong. Here are the mistakes we have made as a company. Here are the learnings we are on. And by the way, here's where I need your help on the areas we are bad at. Now, these conversations go really well because people say, well, thank you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for telling us the way it is. And this is a mandate we have in anyone who interviews in our company, is to just be honest. So present the whole picture. Tell them the good, tell them the bad, and then let them make an informed decision. I interviewed once for another job, and they said the heading of the recruiter mail to me was multi-billion-dollar opportunity, once in a lifetime, cash compensation beyond your imagination. I mean, you name it, it was the most promising job. I was about to call the Ferrari dealership and order my next supercar based on everything they promised me in their job. What they forgot to tell me about that company when I did my due diligence was the company is about to file for Chapter 11 because they're in the middle of a major litigation. Now, I would love to know that when I'm making that decision versus finding out, should you hire me? Unfortunately, I did my research. I had talked to people around it. They told me, no, you want to avoid it. Do you know they have a case pending in this state? Oh, I didn't. And then I said, okay, well, bullet dodged. So that is the value of, it may seem convenient that because the recruiter isn't. So why does that happen? Because the recruiter is under a lot of pressure to meet their metrics and close the job. How is a recruiter paid their bonus is based on, oh, you need to get me this chief technology officer, and I need it like by tomorrow. The recruiter's success depends on how fast they can close. That therefore puts the pressure on them to somehow close it, as they say, by hook or by crook. That's a mistake because the crook part of it catches you ultimately, and you end up upsetting the employee, but you end up hurting the company as well because that step was bypassed. So being authentic goes a long, long way to tell the prescription label warning of every job to say, this is what the benefits of this job are. This is what the side effects are. That is how we need to hire. And that honesty goes a long way as we go along. I'll pause at this stage. I'll give it back to you, Neetu, and then just give me a few minutes where I can share our practices. But let me give it to you first.
No, I just wanted to kind of sum up. I mean, great points, great stories. I mean, you backed up every point with a great story, very practical advice and guidelines. So I'm kind of really, elated by this conversation. One thing that always I feel like people forget to do is, provide feedback. If you are not picking a candidate and they have gone through the interview process or even screening, give them feedback so that they understand where the gap is. So one of the polls that I'm going to launch is about that. So let's launch the poll and let's see what everyone has to say. So this is what % of candidates receive no feedback after being rejected during the screening and interviewing stages of their candidacy. I'm going to give a couple of minutes because I feel like this is, everyone deserves an answer. So if we are not replying back to these candidates, I think we are doing some sort of disservice. All right, another few seconds and then I'm gonna close it out. All right, everybody in. Let me close and share results. So you would see that it says 75%. The actual number is 69%. So 69% of the candidates do not hear back after being rejected, whether it is through interviews or through the screening process. So that's another gap I think we have to be aware of. Hey, if someone is interested in your company, first of all, we have to thank them for actually thinking about us as employers, but at the same time, it's our duty to reach back out and tell them that, hey, this is what is happening and here's where there is a gap. So awesome. So why don't we move on to you, Vineet, and let's talk about how you have structured this whole recruiting process within your own, universe at DataLink.
Absolutely. So first at DataLink, we use values to guide us. In other words, we don't hire people for their appearances or, how well they talk in an interview, how, any of those biases. We actually have structured values and they're visible on our website. And we have structured behavioral interviews with some pretty exciting questions. I mean, they're questions which will really test whether you role model that value or not. And we're looking for those role models. Everything in our company is centered around our values, whether it's our recognition program, which we call the Superlink Award, whether it's our peer feedback, which we give to each other over performance evaluation, that's around our values. So the people we hire go through a behavioral assessment against our values. So when we look for values, we feel that it helps us eliminate a lot of our biases. And that is important for us. The second, as I've written recently on LinkedIn as well, we look for bruises. We want to see your bruises. We want to see how many injuries you got in your journey. How many times did you fall down? And what did you do when you fell down? Did you get up? Did you run? People who fell down and ran again are more valuable to us than people who pretend they never fell down because someone was holding their hand. Or because they're so averse of falling that they never ran because they felt they would fall down. So we look for those bruises. And I think those are very exciting conversations. Like all interviews with me talk about failures, mistakes, wrong decisions, wrong turns taken, bad career choices. We don't dwell on how bad the manager was. We dwell on how we did, how we could do. And those bruise-oriented discussions really bring a lot around in our candidates. They open up in the conversation. They tell us their real persona, and we're able to make a better evaluation of whether that persona meets our values versus a scripted 1 hour, nicely choreographed interview, which is not how a candidate would be in their real life. We don't look for mistake avoidance. We look for the learnings behind the mistakes in that point. So, and in that regard, I'll also kind of share an interesting tale where a candidate came. I once talked to a candidate. I invited him to the office, and he was very nervous. So, so the person just over talked, didn't answer any of my questions, made a complete mess. Actually, this was as bad as an interview could have gone, right? I mean, no question was being answered. They were over talking. And at the end, in the middle of that conversation, they kind of stopped and they said, oh, I don't think this is going really well, right? And I smiled and I said, yeah, I don't think it's going all that great. So what should we do? What happened? He said, he said that actually, this is what happened. And, a number of reasons that candidate just. And once you're nervous, once you make a mistake, any attempt you make to cover that mistake makes you trip more and make more mistakes. It's a cycle, right? So, and then the fear that you're going to lose the job doesn't help you improve your performance. So what I told him was, I said, look, this is probably not very productive to continue the discussion in this frame of mind. How about you kind of take a deep breath, we schedule another call, and let's just talk again. And then we can laugh over this incident. So the candidate went away 3 days later, gave him another time, came back, kind of, laughed about, we joked and laughed about what had happened. But then the candidate pivoted the conversation through authentic examples. The candidate no longer had the fear of failing because they knew they're not going to be judged on that. The decision will not be based on how many mistakes they make. And we ended up, again, hiring this person, ended up being an amazing person who worked for the company then for 7 years. And we would have lost out on that candidate. And the candidate would have, if it had been a score, like an American Idol, you got to score a particular performance. You don't score performances. For me, it's not performance. It's about how human are you? And is this really your true self? Then we also look for potential. So as I said, we don't look for exact matches. In fact, we're looking for potentials. I will give you my example, and that person is on this call, but I won't take their name so as to not embarrass them. But on my team, we recently made a hire, and this person has not worked in the industry before, but graduated recently, 2 days back, and congratulations to them again. But they had that spark, that potential, that ability. They demonstrated we had worked on a project together before, and they had that spark, they had that potential. And so we said that this person has all the values we are looking for, even though they may not have 20 years, 15 years, 10 years in the industry. And so far, just in the short time the person has been in there doing a phenomenal job. So, you look for potential. You don't look for like a past record. You don't look for an established record, because that energy you can tap into, which is untapped, is where the growth will happen. If the person has already done everything you wanted them to do, then where is the challenge? What did you do? What value did you add for them? They already got that experience. You're not adding anything to their career. So it's the tapping into the potential we are big on. Therefore, you'll never find us looking for exact matches. Then we also avoid looking for mutually exclusive traits. And I see this happen. For example, if you talk too much, the recruiter will say you're over talking. If you don't talk, they'll call you an introvert and that you don't talk enough. So how do I make you happy? Should I talk more? How should I? So it's like, what's enough for you? We often end up judging people, whether do too much or too less. We are never happy. If you have a candidate who has stayed in a job for 10 years, the recruiter may say, oh, this person didn't have too many multi-company experience, too long in the same company. If the poor person changes every 2 years or 1 year, you will give them the feedback that, oh, but they change too often, they're very unstable, right? So we don't look for mutually exclusive traits. We don't look at the no-win situations. We want to look at the whole picture. Finally, we want to be evaluated like when we are evaluating. In other words, we want our candidates to evaluate us. We want to learn where we could have done better. And we have made mistakes as we have hired. So our candidates, we want to hear from them in the feedback. Our new hires, we want to hear them about feedback. We are a very feedback-driven culture. And where feedback is at multiple points, we want to get those nudges. And that's what makes us effective as we go along, because we know we have to learn every single day. So it's values, it's bruises, it's learning from the mistakes, it's focusing on potential. It's also looking at avoiding the mutually exclusive traits. And it's also the passion for being evaluated, not just being in the evaluator seat, is what we drive, how we drive our recruiting in our company.
That's awesome.
So, thank you.
Amazing that you go by your values and that's how this process is driven. That sounds really awesome. I have a couple of questions, but I think we will get a chance to answer one question. So one question I got is, as technology continues to evolve, how do you see the role of recruiters changing in the future? What skills and qualities do you think will be most valuable for recruiters to possess in the coming years?
I think, again, because you likely are not going to meet the candidate in person, for instance, in the future workforce, it's going to become even more virtual. It's super important that you gauge the EQ of the company. The resume can give you kind of insights into the IQ, sort of technical competence, but you need to really gauge the behavioral fit. Therefore, recruiters must focus on the soft skills even more compared to the past, where you could shake hands and read the person's language.
Awesome, awesome. And one more I have is, are there any specific resources or tools you would recommend to recruiters who want to improve the recruiting process and avoid the 7 deadly sins?
I think the best tool is the gift of writing to the candidates. That's the first tool I'll recommend, is just write, just talk to them. Don't worry about the position. Don't worry about who's winning and who's losing. Just build a relationship, network like a sales guy does. A salesperson constantly talks to customers. They may not get the deal tomorrow or even a year, but a good salesperson has this list of contacts where they keep handy. Who knows who will give them the contract? So you have to do that. You have to create a list of candidates, not just a list of vacancies. That's the first thing I'll say. Second is, again, biases happen. We are all confronted by it. So acknowledge people as fallible, error-prone human beings, and embrace the fact that they are flawed. Everyone is flawed, including us. So I think when we remove this aura of the perfect performance needed in an interview, the recruiting quality increases. And that means that you should also not put too much pressure on your recruiters to say, get me the person by tomorrow. I think the message should be, get me the best person who's the best fit for me. It's okay if you take a day more, but I need the best fit, right? And so I think it's the cultural adjustment which we have to keep making. And again, keeping in mind that that's what our brand is all about, is how we treat people.
Rightly said. I think this is great advice. I think we're out of time, but thank you so much, Vineet, for sharing all this knowledge and all these experiences. I mean, practical stuff. There was no fluff in it. I could just say that. But this was amazing, very insightful, really, really what we can take and apply like day one. So thank you so much.
Neetu, I'd like to offer, if any of the attendees want to reach out after
Absolutely.
the fact, you can feel free to make the contact available, and I'll be happy to have a follow-up with anyone who wants to know about the process.
Sure. We will share the deck with everybody, and it has the QR code to your LinkedIn, so they can scan and they can reach out to you directly. But thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining today's session. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.